Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation by the Federation for Children with Special Needs. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about the power of advocacy and how this pertains to disability rights, collective action, and system change. I will be doing image descriptions throughout this presentation, beginning with the title slide. Now, all slides in this presentation have a white background with a navy blue bar at the top and another at the bottom. On this first slide, the bottom bar is a bit thicker and contains the words informing, educating, and empowering families. It also includes the Federation phone number, 617-236-7210, our web address, www.fcsn.org, and our general email address, info@fcsn.org. Below this, there are social media icons for Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Now, in all other slides, the bottom bar reads only Copyright Federation for Children with Special Needs. Also on this title slide is the Federation logo. The Federation logo is made up of 5 hearts, each one a different color, red, yellow, green, blue, and purple, and they are joined at the points to form a circle, creating the outline of a star in the center. Next to this is written the words Federation for Children with Special Needs. Next slide. Advocacy is a superpower. So on this slide, there is a cartoon image of a Black woman wearing a superhero cape and mask. One arm is raised above her head and she appears to be flying. In the arm raised above her head, she is holding an apple, and in her other arm, there's a book with a piece of paper that says A+ sticking out of it. Around her are flying books and the background is blue. So advocates of our children and students are passionate, and they see the child's potential even when countless others do not, thereby becoming their superheroes. And they work to ensure a high-quality education for every child. The most influential advocacy groups are made up of many different stakeholders who bring with them their varied backgrounds, skills, and competencies. This slide also contains a link to a webpage titled My Parent, My Advocate, My Hero. Next slide. The disability rights movement led to the civil rights movement led to the disability rights movement. The disability rights movement came out of the work of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. On this slide, we see a black and white photo of protesters, several of whom are in wheelchairs, and they are in a city street holding a large sign that says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Organizations and disability rights advocates saw the opportunity to join the civil rights movement and demand equal treatment, equal access, and equal opportunity for people with disabilities. Parents and self-advocates were a very important part of this movement, demanding that their children be taken out of institutes and asylums and placed in schools. Next slide. Celebrating parent advocacy from 1972 to 2022. Parent advocacy has been central in developing special education policy. On this slide, we see former President George H.W. Bush sitting at a small table signing the IDEA law. There are 2 men on either side of him in wheelchairs, and a man and woman standing behind them. In the background, there is a green field with trees and a small parking lot. In 1972, Massachusetts passed the first non-categorical law guaranteeing all children the right to a free and appropriate public education. This was known as Chapter 766. Chapter 766 later served as a model for the first special education legislation, federal special education legislation. This was called the Education for All Handicapped Act, which later became the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, which is what we see for the president signing. Martha Ziegler, leader and activist. So one influential parent advocate was Martha Ziegler, who founded the Federation in 1974 and was the executive director until 1997. She played a very important role in creating legislation benefiting all children with disabilities. For example, as director of the U.S. Department of Education's National Parent Program, she was integral to the development of the parent training and information centers, such as the federations, which are now across the country. And she was among one of the most respected parent leaders in the country. Ziegler is pictured here in this photo. She is an older woman wearing black-rimmed glasses and is smiling at the camera. Next slide. Individual parent advocacy is not working. On this slide, we see an image of a book titled Special Education Disproportionality Among Black Boys, Special Education as a Tool of Miseducation for Black Boys, A Call to Action, by Rick Wallace. This book cover shows a picture of a Black teenage boy holding a sign that says, "Help." Advocacy is most successful when it is done with a community, through collective action. Individual parent advocacy results in parents have to spend unreasonable amounts of time and resources in ensuring their child's needs are met. They might feel alone and in a fight or struggle. Plus, many parents' voices go unheard, particularly those who do not have access to this time and resources. And we therefore see disproportionate educational outcomes based on income and race. If we want to see lasting, systemic change, parents should work together to ensure that every child receives the right to a free, appropriate, and public education. Next slide. And this is why the family voice is so important. The Massachusetts Department of Education has developed a family engagement model that brings family voice to the center of decision-making tables. This model focuses on, quote, the systematic inclusion of families in activities and programs that promote their children's development, learning, and wellness, including the planning, development, and evaluation of such activities, programs, and systems. Through this model, families and family groups, such as CPACs and LPACs, play a key role in their children's education. On this slide, we see the cover of the Massachusetts Family Engagement Framework titled Strengthening Partnerships, a framework for prenatal through young adulthood family engagement in Massachusetts. On the cover, several people have their hands in a pile in the center of the image. A young Black girl has her hand on top, and she is looking just past the camera with a hopeful facial expression. Next slide. Nothing about us without us. When we're talking about advocacy, it's so important to center the voices of self-advocates who are experts in their own needs and experiences and have been leaders in the disability rights movement since its beginning. Able-bodied disability rights advocates should think of themselves fighting with people with disabilities instead of for people with disabilities. One very important pioneering leader of the disability rights movement is Ed Roberts, who was the first person who used a wheelchair to attend the University of California, Berkeley. When the school learned of his disabilities, and this was after he was accepted into the program, they refused to admit him on the grounds that his iron lung wouldn't fit in the dorm room. However, Roberts successfully challenged the administration and was accepted into the program. In 1972, he and other students from this program founded the Center for Independent Living, and in 1976, he was appointed director of the California Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, which had in 1962 deemed him too disabled to hold a job. As director, he worked to establish independent living centers throughout the state. On this slide, we see two black and white photos. In one, Ed Roberts, a white man with a beard, is sitting in a wheelchair next to a black man standing on his right, who has a seeing eye dog. They are on a path with trees, and there's a 3-story building, presumably on a college campus, in the background. In the second photo, we see Ed Roberts in a wheelchair facing the camera as part of a protest. There is a man standing behind him with a very large sign saying "Civil Rights for Disabled." Next slide. Disability advocacy today, dismantling ableism. So there are several disability rights advocates following in the footsteps of people like Ed Roberts. On this slide, we see a portrait of Haben Girma. She's a black woman with long hair, and she's wearing a red shirt. She is facing forward, looking just past the camera, slightly to the left, with a neutral facial expression. There's a blue background behind her. Haben Girma is one of the most prominent disability rights advocates today. Her work as an advocate began when she had to fight for accessible cafeteria menus in her college as a deafblind woman. She is the first deafblind person to graduate from Harvard Law School and has been a strong advocate for digital accessibility. For example, she won a case against Scribd, whose online ebooks were not accessible to blind readers. This affirmed that the ADA covers digital spaces as well as physical spaces. Like many advocates today, Haben focuses her work on dismantling ableism, or the widespread belief and practices that devalue and discriminate against people with disabilities. Ableism is a relatively new term, having come from the disability rights movements of the 60s and 70s. Haben works to change dominant ableist narratives, encouraging us to view disability not as a barrier, but as an opportunity for innovation. Haben says, "My disability is not something I've had to overcome. I'm still deafblind. The biggest barrier that I face is ableism." Next slide. So we encourage you to become a change agent and get involved with your community. Join your local CPAC, LPAC, your PTA or PTO, school advisory boards, task forces, town or community advisory boards, or state level council. On this slide, there's a link for Serving Groups That Make Decision, a guide to families. This is a great tool for anyone who is currently serving or wants to serve on a decision-making group, like the ones mentioned. You can also take a look at Improving Public Education, Parents as Change Agents, for some interesting research about improving outcomes for students by effectively engaging parents and guardians. Next slide. So on this last slide, we see the same Federation logo from the title slide, and the text on the bottom blue line is the same as the title slide as well. Let's end with this quote by Kofi A. Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, that reflects on the importance of continuing to advocate for disability rights. Disabilities are yet another manifestation of global diversity. Let us always be committed to the fundamental principles of dignity and equality for all human beings. Thank you so much for joining the Federation to learn about the power of advocacy and disability rights. If you have any questions or want to contact us, you can call 617-236-7210 or reach us at info@fcsn.org to email us. Thank you so much for joining today.